Climate change is definitely happening. If you speak to any scientist, it's an unarguable fact. How much of that is induced by humans and how much is induced on a natural cycle of the climate as a whole is something which can start to be picked apart a little bit, but the effects we're actually having is definitely having major effects on the ecosystems as a whole, from terrestrial side all the way down to the marine system. So my research is currently split into two main groups. We have some based here in the UK, and then we have quite a large amount which is based in tropical islands, which is always very nice to go and visit, and that's more focused around coral reefs. So my research on coral reefs focuses on how changes in the climate are affecting these amazing ecosystems. So we principally look into things like coral disease and bleaching, which is where they lose their symbiotic algae. And this has been relatively recently in the news with a large death in places like the Great Barrier Reef and the Maldives. The Maldives is actually one of the places we do a lot of work. We actually have a research station out there which we work with. And our students can go out there and participate in that as well. So coral reefs are really important for a number of reasons. They're classed as the rainforest of the sea. They provide a lot of food for a large percentage of the population, both from reef fish as a whole all the way up to pelagic fish, which have a certain part of their life cycle associated with reefs as a whole. They're also very important to stop land erosion and coastal erosion. So another part of our research is something called environmental DNA. It's a relatively new molecular technique which allows us to actually sample an environment, something like the water column, for example, and this could be in a canal, in a river, in lakes, and we can start to detect what organisms actually live in that. So the HS2 is a really good example of how we can actually utilize these techniques in a real world example. So obviously this is the new train line which is linking London up through the Midlands and into the north. And it needs to go through quite large tracts of some areas of greenbelt and some areas of valuable habitat. And what we can do now is we can sample very quickly and efficiently those different habitats and see what species are there, try and relate this to relative abundance of those species as well, which relates to the importance as far as breeding populations and things. And then this can be backed up with physical surveys as well. So research is obviously really important as a fundamental concept to understanding what's happening. And a lot of the research we actually do is just filling those gaps of knowledge where we actually just don't really understand the full context of what can happen in the face of things like climate change. So there's a large section of just filling the gaps in that sort of instance. But then there's a lot of experimental work we can actually do to conduct to see what's going to happen in the future.